The day a human babysitter earned the respect of apex beasts. Sarah Chen never thought her life would take such a strange turn. She was just a 26-year-old woman from a small town in Colorado. She had worked as a babysitter since she was 14 years old. She loved children. She understood them. She knew how to calm a crying baby at 3 in the morning. She knew how to handle a toddler throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. She knew how to make a scared child feel safe during a thunderstorm. These were her skills. These were her talents. And somehow, these talents had brought her to the other side of the galaxy. It had been 3 years since humanity made first contact with the Galactic Federation. The universe, it turned out, was filled with intelligent life. Hundreds of species had formed a massive alliance that spanned thousands of star systems. When humanity joined this alliance, everything changed. Suddenly, humans were not alone in the universe. They were the newcomers. They were the strange ones. They were the ones that nobody quite understood. Sarah had never planned to leave Earth. She was happy with her simple life. She ran a small daycare center in her hometown. She took care of children while their parents went to work. It was honest work. It was good work. But then, the opportunity came. The Galactic Federation was looking for humans who could work with alien species. They needed translators, engineers, scientists, and to everyone's surprise, they needed childcare workers. The reason was simple. Human children were considered remarkably easy to raise compared to the offspring of most alien species. Human babies cried. Yes. But they did not spit acid. Human toddlers threw tantrums. Yes. But they did not have venomous claws. Human children were fragile, soft, and relatively harmless. This made humans seem like experts at handling difficult young ones. If a human could keep a human child alive, surely they could handle anything. Sarah had applied on a whim. She never expected to be accepted, but the Federation had reviewed her application and her years of experience, and within 6 months, she found herself on a transport ship heading to Station Omega-7, a massive space station that served as a trading hub and diplomatic center for dozens of species. The station was unlike anything Sarah had ever imagined. It was a city floating in space. Millions of beings lived there. The corridors were filled with creatures of every shape and size. Some had scales, some had fur. Some had neither. Some walked on 2 legs, some walked on 6. Some did not walk at all but floated through the air, on invisible currents. Sarah had spent her first week on the station just staring at everything with her mouth hanging open. Her job was at the Federation's Interspecies Child Care Center. It was a place where diplomats, traders, and workers could leave their offspring while they attended to their business. The center was run by a Veloxian named Director Mira. Veloxians were tall, thin beings with silver skin and 4 arms. Mira had been skeptical of Sarah at first. She had never worked with a human before. She had heard that humans were fragile and emotional, and not particularly intelligent by galactic standards. But the Federation had insisted, and so Mira had accepted Sarah onto her staff. For the first few months, Sarah worked with the easier species. She cared for the children of the Luminari, gentle beings made of soft light who never caused any trouble. She watched over the young Florians, fluffy creatures that looked like walking cotton balls and communicated through musical tones. She helped raise the infant Aquilians, who needed to be kept in special water tanks and fed a diet of processed algae. These were simple tasks. Sarah handled them well. Director Mira was impressed but not amazed. Then came the day that changed everything. It started like any other morning. Sarah arrived at the center early, as she always did. She liked to prepare the rooms before the children arrived. She checked the temperature controls, the food supplies, the safety barriers. She made sure everything was in order. She was drinking her morning coffee when Director Mira called her into her office. The director's office was a large room with windows that looked out into the stars. Mira was sitting behind her desk, her 4 arms folded across her chest. She looked worried. Sarah had never seen her look worried before. "We have a situation," Mira said. Her voice was calm, but there was tension underneath it. A delegation from the Voraxian Empire arrived last night. They are here for trade negotiations. Very important negotiations. The future of several trade routes depends on these talks. Sarah nodded. She had heard of the Voraxians. Everyone had heard of the Voraxians. They were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They were also one of the most feared. Voraxians were apex predators. They stood over 8 feet tall. They had thick, armored scales that could stop a laser blast. They had claws that could tear through metal. They had teeth that could crush bone. They had 4 eyes that could see in complete darkness. They were, by any measure, terrifying. The Voraxian delegation has brought their young, Mira continued. 3 offspring belonging to the High Commander himself. They need to be cared for while the negotiations take place. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Voraxian young? Yes. Mira's silver face was grim. The caretaker who was supposed to handle them has fallen ill. A sudden case of Neptunian fever. She cannot work. None of my other staff are willing to take the assignment. Voraxian young are considered extremely dangerous. They are born with their full set of claws and teeth. They are aggressive by nature. They view everything as either prey or a threat. Sarah understood now why Mira looked so worried. You want me to do it? I am not ordering you to do anything, Mira said carefully. This is a volunteer assignment. You have every right to refuse. No one would blame you. But the negotiations cannot proceed if there is no one to watch the young ones, and if the negotiations fail. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Sarah thought about it. She thought about the Voraxians she had seen in pictures. She thought about their claws, and their teeth, and their 4 unblinking eyes. She thought about what those young ones might look like. She imagined tiny versions of those massive predators. She imagined them looking at her the way a cat looks at a mouse. Then she thought about the children she had cared for over the years. She thought about the difficult ones, the biters, the screamers, the ones who threw things, the ones who refused to eat, the ones who refused to sleep. She had handled them all. She had never met a child she could not reach. I will do it, Sarah said. Mira stared at her for a long moment. You understand the risks? Voraxian young have killed caretakers before. Their instincts are powerful. They are not like the gentle species you have worked with. I understand, Sarah said. But a child is a child. No matter what they look like, no matter where they come from, they all need the same things. They need safety. They need patience. They need someone who is not afraid of them. Mira made a sound that might have been a laugh. Not afraid? Human, you would be foolish not to be afraid. Oh, I am afraid, Sarah admitted. But I am not going to let that stop me. 1 hour later, Sarah stood outside room 47. It was a special room designed for dangerous species. The walls were reinforced. The furniture was made of materials that could withstand extreme damage. There were emergency protocols in place. There were alarms and barriers and safety measures of every kind. Sarah had read all the documentation. She knew what she was getting into. She took a deep breath and opened the door. The room was dark. Voraxians preferred low light. Sarah let her eyes adjust. Slowly, she began to make out shapes in the shadows. There was movement in the corner. Something was watching her. Hello, Sarah said softly. My name is Sarah. I am going to be taking care of you today. 3 pairs of 4 eyes turned toward her. They glowed faintly in the darkness, like stars reflected in deep water. Sarah could hear breathing. Heavy, rhythmic breathing. The sound of predators. Then they stepped into the light. The 3 Voraxian young were smaller than she had expected. They were only about 4 feet tall, which meant they were the size of human 7-year-olds. But they were not shaped like human children. They had thick, scaled bodies. They had long tails that swept the ground behind them. They had powerful legs built for running and pouncing. Their arms ended in hands that had 3 fingers each, and each finger had a claw that was sharp enough to slice through stone. The largest of the 3 stepped forward. This one had darker scales than the others. Its 4 eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that made her blood run cold. It opened its mouth and showed its teeth. They were white and sharp and perfectly designed for tearing flesh. "You are small," the young Voraxian said. Its voice was surprisingly clear. Voraxian young learned to speak early. It was necessary for survival in their society. "You are soft. You have no claws. You have no armor. You are prey." Sarah did not step back. She did not show fear. She had learned long ago that children could sense fear. It made them uncomfortable. It made them act out. It made them push boundaries. "I am not prey," Sarah said calmly. "I am your caretaker, and you are not hunters today. Today, you are children in my care." The young Voraxian tilted its head. This was not the response it had expected. The other two young ones crept closer. Curious now. They circled Sarah slowly, examining her from every angle. One of them sniffed her. Another poked her arm with a claw, testing her skin. "Soft," one of them said. "Very soft. Easy to break." "Soft. Soft. Very soft. Many things that are soft are also strong," Sarah said. "Water is soft. But water can wear down stone. Wind is soft. But wind can knock down trees. Softness is not weakness." The young Voraxians looked at each other. They did not understand this human. She did not run. She did not cry. She did not try to fight. She just stood there, calm and steady, like a rock in a river. "Are you not afraid?" the largest one asked. Sarah smiled. It was a gentle smile. The same smile she gave to frightened children on their first day at her daycare. "I am a little afraid," she admitted. "But being afraid does not mean I will leave you. It does not mean I will fail you. I have taken care of many children. Some of them were difficult. Some of them tried to hurt me, but I never gave up on them, and I will not give up on you." The young Voraxians exchanged glances again. This was very strange behavior for a prey species. They had been taught that prey ran away. Prey screamed. Prey begged for mercy. This human did none of those things. "We are hungry," the smallest Voraxian said. It was the first time this one had spoken. Its voice was higher than the others. Sarah nodded. "Then let us get you some food. What do you like to eat?" The young Voraxians grinned. Their teeth gleamed in the low light. "Meat," they said together. "Raw meat." Sarah did not flinch. She had expected this. "Then meat is what you shall have. Follow me." She turned her back on them and walked toward the food preparation area. This was a risk. Turning your back on a predator was never safe. But Sarah understood something that many adults forgot. Children needed to feel trusted. They needed to feel respected. If she treated these young ones like monsters, they would become monsters. If she treated them like children, they might just act like children. Behind her, she heard the soft padding of clawed feet. The young Voraxians were following her. They had not attacked. They had not pounced. They were curious. They wanted to see what this strange, soft human would do next. Sarah smiled to herself. This was going to be an interesting day. The food preparation area was stocked with supplies for dozens of different species. Sarah found the Voraxian section quickly. There were large cuts of red meat stored in temperature-controlled containers. The meat came from livestock animals raised specifically for carnivorous species. Sarah selected 3 portions and placed them on plates designed to withstand Voraxian claws. The 3 young ones watched her every movement. They sat at the table she indicated, though they seemed uncomfortable with the chairs. Voraxians did not typically use furniture in the same way other species did. Sarah made a mental note of this. "Here you are," she said, placing the plates in front of them. "Eat slowly. There is plenty more if you are still hungry after." The young Voraxians tore into the meat with enthusiasm. They did not use utensils. They used their claws and their teeth. The sounds of eating filled the room. Tearing, chewing, swallowing. It was messy and loud, and would have horrified most beings in the galaxy. Sarah sat down across from them and watched calmly. She had seen children eat messily before. Human toddlers were not exactly graceful eaters either. She remembered one little boy who had managed to get spaghetti in his eyebrows, his ears, and somehow his shoes. Compared to that, the Voraxians were almost neat. The largest young one, whose name Sarah learned was Krath, finished first. He licked his claws clean and stared at her. "You sit and watch. You do not eat." "Why? I already ate breakfast," Sarah explained. "Humans eat cooked food, usually. We have different dietary needs than Voraxians. Cooked food is weak food," Krath said with clear disdain. "It has no blood. No life. How do you gain strength from dead things?" "Krath. Krath. Krath. Cooked food is weak food. Cooked food is weak food. Cooked food is weak food." Sarah considered the question. "Our bodies work differently than yours. We cannot digest raw meat the way you can. It would make us sick. So we cook it first. It is not weakness. It is adaptation. Every species finds its own way to survive." Krath seemed to think about this. The second young one, a female named Vera, spoke up. "Our teachers say humans are one of the weakest species in the galaxy. They say you have no natural weapons, no claws, no venom, no armor. They say humans only survive because they trick other species, because they hide behind technology." "Your teachers are not entirely wrong," Sarah admitted. "Humans do not have the physical advantages that many species have. But we have other strengths." "What strengths?" The smallest one, named Tor, leaned forward with interest. He was the most curious of the three, Sarah had noticed. He asked questions. He examined things. He was a learner. "Endurance," Sarah said. "Humans can run for very long distances. Many prey animals on our world are faster than us in short bursts. But humans can chase them for hours and hours until the prey becomes too tired to run anymore. This is called persistence hunting. It is how our ancestors survived before we had technology." The young Voraxians exchanged glances. This was new information. On their world, the strong killed the weak quickly. A hunt that lasted hours was unthinkable. "What else?" Tor asked. "We heal well," Sarah continued. "Human bodies can recover from injuries that would kill many other species. We can survive the loss of limbs. We can survive diseases that would destroy other immune systems. We can survive extreme temperatures. We can survive on almost any type of food. We are very hard to kill permanently." Krath made a rumbling sound in his throat. It might have been laughter. "You speak of healing. But if a Voraxian struck you with its claws, you would not heal. You would die." "Probably," Sarah agreed. "In a direct fight, I would lose against any of you." "That is true. But life is not always about direct fights. Sometimes strength is knowing when not to fight. Sometimes strength is patience. Sometimes strength is caring for others when it would be easier to care only for yourself." Vera tilted her head. "Caring for others is strength? That makes no sense. Caring for others makes you vulnerable. Others can betray you. Others can fail you. It is better to rely only on yourself." "Is it?" Sarah asked gently. "Do you have no one you care about? No family? No friends?" Vera hesitated. She glanced at her brothers. "Family is different. Family is blood. You protect family because their strength is your strength." "And what am I doing right now?" Sarah asked. "I am caring for you. I am protecting you. I am making sure you are fed and safe. Does that not make me like family? Even if just for today?" The three young Voraxians went silent. This was a concept they had never considered. A stranger choosing to care for them. A prey species offering protection to predators. It went against everything they had been taught about how the universe worked. The rest of the morning passed in relative peace. Sarah kept the young ones occupied with activities. She discovered that Voraxian children, like all children, became bored easily. Bored children were dangerous children, regardless of species. So she kept them busy. She found puzzles designed for young Voraxians. These were not simple puzzles. They were complex three-dimensional structures that required problem-solving skills and physical manipulation. The young ones attacked the puzzles with enthusiasm. They growled in frustration when pieces did not fit. They roared in triumph when they completed a section. Sarah watched and offered encouragement. She taught them a human game called hide and seek. This was risky. Voraxians were natural hunters. Hiding and seeking was built into their instincts, but Sarah modified the rules. The seeker had to find the hidden ones without using claws or teeth. It was a challenge of senses and patience, not violence. The young Voraxians were surprisingly good at hiding. Their scaled bodies could blend into shadows in ways that seemed impossible. But Sarah was good at seeking. She had spent years finding children who had hidden in closets, under beds, behind curtains, inside cabinets. She found Tor first. Curled up behind a large piece of furniture. She found Vera second, pressed flat against a dark wall. Krath was the hardest to find. He had somehow wedged himself into a ventilation shaft that should have been too small for him. "You are good at this game," Krath admitted grudgingly when Sarah finally discovered his hiding spot. "Better than expected. I have had a lot of practice," Sarah said with a smile. By midday, the young ones were tired. This surprised them. They were not used to being tired. On their homeworld, they would have spent the day training for combat or hunting simulated prey. Those activities did not exhaust them the way this morning had. "Why are we tired?" Vera complained. She lay sprawled on the floor, her tail twitching lazily. "We did nothing strenuous. We solved puzzles. We played games. These are not difficult things. Your minds are tired," Sarah explained. "Mental activity uses energy too. Learning new things, solving problems, adapting to new situations, all of this takes effort. Your bodies are telling you that you need rest." "Voraxians do not need rest during the day," Krath protested. But his words were undermined by a massive yawn that revealed all of his teeth. "All beings need rest," Sarah said. "Even the strongest. There is no shame in sleeping when you are tired. It is how your body grows stronger. It is how your mind processes what you have learned." She dimmed the lights in the room. She brought out soft mats that were designed for Voraxian anatomy. She arranged them in a corner, where the shadows were deepest. "Sleep," she said softly. "I will be here when you wake. Nothing will harm you while you rest." The young ones hesitated. Sleep was a vulnerable state. On their homeworld, only the strong could afford to sleep deeply. The weak slept lightly, always ready to flee or fight. Sleeping in the presence of a stranger, even a prey species stranger, went against their instincts, but they were so tired. And somehow, strangely, they trusted this human. She had not tried to harm them. She had fed them. She had entertained them. She had treated them not as monsters or threats, but as children. It was confusing. It was strange, but it was also nice. Tor was the first to lie down on a mat. Within moments, his eyes closed, and his breathing deepened. Vera followed shortly after, curling her tail around her body protectively, even in sleep. Krath held out the longest. He sat with his back against the wall, watching Sarah with his 4 eyes. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "You could have refused. You could have let someone else take this duty. Why did you choose to care for us?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Because someone had to. And because I believed I could." "That is not a complete answer," Sarah nodded. "You are right. It is not." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "On my world, there is a belief that how you treat the most difficult ones shows who you truly are. Anyone can be kind to those who are easy to love, but being kind to those who are challenging, that is a choice. That is a test of character." Krath processed this. "You see us as a challenge? As a test?" "I see you as children," Sarah said simply. Children who are far from home, in a strange place, surrounded by species who fear you. That must be lonely. That must be hard. I remember feeling that way when I first came to this station. Everything was strange. Everyone looked at me differently. I was the alien here. The weird one. The outsider. I know what that loneliness feels like. Krath was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lay down on the remaining mat. I do not understand you, human. But I think I would like to understand you. Perhaps when I wake, you will tell me more stories about your world. I would like that, Sarah said. Krath closed his eyes. Within minutes, all 3 young Voraxians were asleep. Sarah sat in the corner of the room, watching over them. She thought about how strange this moment was. 3 apex predators, members of one of the most feared species in the galaxy, sleeping peacefully under her care. If someone had told her a year ago that this would be her life, she would have laughed. But here she was. And despite the danger, despite the fear that still lingered at the edges of her mind, she felt a sense of purpose. This was why she had become a caretaker in the first place, not for the easy days, not for the simple children, but for moments like this. Moments when she could make a difference in young lives. The afternoon brought new challenges. When the young Voraxians woke from their nap, they were energetic and restless. The morning's activities had satisfied their minds, but their bodies craved action. They needed physical outlets for their predatory instincts. Sarah had anticipated this. She had requested access to one of the station's holographic training rooms. These rooms could simulate any environment, any scenario. They were typically used for combat training or educational simulations. Sarah had a different purpose in mind. She took the young ones to Training Room 12. When they entered, Krath immediately began scanning the space for threats. His instincts were always alert, always watching. "What is this place?" Vera asked. "It smells like nothing. It feels empty." "It is a simulation room," Sarah explained. "We can create any environment we want here. Any world. Any scenario. I thought we might visit my homeworld. Would you like to see Earth?" The young ones exchanged glances. They had heard of Earth. It was the human homeworld. Their teachers had dismissed it as an unremarkable planet with unremarkable life forms. But now, they were curious. "Show us," Tor said eagerly. Sarah activated the simulation controls. The empty room shimmered and transformed. Suddenly, they were standing in a vast grassland, under a blue sky. The grass swayed in a gentle wind. In the distance, mountains rose against the horizon. Birds flew overhead, their calls echoing across the plain. The young Voraxians stared in wonder. They had never seen anything like this. Their homeworld was harsh and rocky, filled with volcanic activity and dangerous predators. This place was soft, peaceful, beautiful. "This is called the African savanna," Sarah said. "It is one of the great grasslands of Earth. Many animals live here." As she spoke, the simulation populated with creatures. Zebras appeared in the distance, grazing on the tall grass. A herd of elephants moved slowly across the plain. Lions lounged in the shade of acacia trees. Tor's eyes went wide. "Prey," he whispered. "So much prey." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "But look at the lions. Those are predators. The greatest hunters on this land. See how they rest during the day? They conserve their energy. They wait for the right moment to hunt. Patience is their greatest weapon." Krath studied the lions with interest. They were much smaller than Voraxians, of course, but there was something in the way they carried themselves. A confidence. A certainty. They did not need to prove their strength. They simply were strong. "Your world has apex predators," Vera observed. "We were told humans had no competition. That you dominated your planet completely." "We do now," Sarah said. "But it was not always so. For most of our history, we were not the dominant species. We were prey as often as we were hunters. We survived because we learned. We adapted. We worked together. Our strength was never in our claws or our teeth. It was in our minds and in our bonds with each other. She changed the simulation again. Now they stood on a snowy mountain peak. Cold wind bit at their scales. Below them stretched a vast white landscape, dotted with evergreen trees. Humans live here too, Sarah said. In places so cold that water turns to stone. We built shelters. We made clothing from animal skins. We learned to survive where no creature should survive. Another change. They stood in a dense jungle, surrounded by towering trees and hanging vines. The air was thick with moisture and the sounds of countless creatures. And here, in places so thick with life that danger lurks behind every leaf, we learned the plants that could heal us and the plants that could kill us. We learned to move through the undergrowth without being seen. Another change. They stood in a vast desert, with endless dunes stretching to the horizon under a merciless sun. And here, in places with no water for days in any direction, we learned to find moisture in unlikely places. We learned to travel by night and rest by day. We learned to endure. Learned to find likely places. We learned detected. The young Voraxians were silent. They had always been taught that strength meant physical power, claws and teeth and armor. But this human was showing them a different kind of strength. The strength to survive anywhere. The strength to adapt to anything. The strength to never give up. Your species is strange, Krath said finally. You should not exist. By every measure, you should have died out long ago. Prey species with no weapons, living on a world full of predators. It makes no sense, Sarah smiled. And yet here we are, among the stars, members of the Galactic Federation, taking care of the children of apex predators. Maybe strength is more complicated than anyone realizes. Krath made that rumbling sound again. This time, Sarah was certain it was laughter. Perhaps, he said. Perhaps it is. The crisis came without warning. It was late afternoon when the alarms began to sound. Sarah had been showing the young Voraxians how to play card games, a human pastime that fascinated them with its combination of strategy and chance. The sudden blaring of sirens made everyone freeze. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the childcare center. Automated announcements echoed through the corridors. There was an incident, a breach in the station's outer hull. Everyone was ordered to shelter in place. Sarah immediately moved into action. She had trained for emergencies. All station personnel had. She knew the protocols. She knew the procedures. But she also knew that protocols did not account for everything. Stay close to me, she told the young Voraxians. Her voice was calm but firm. This is not a drill. Something has happened. We need to move to a secure location. Krath rose to his full height. His 4 eyes scanned the room, assessing threats. His claws extended automatically. What kind of incident? Who is attacking? I do not know yet, Sarah admitted. But we are not going to wait here to find out. Follow me. She led them out of the room and into the corridor. Other caretakers were doing the same, guiding their charges toward the emergency shelters located throughout the center. Sarah spotted Director Mira coordinating the evacuation. The Veloxian's silver face was tight with concern. Sarah, Mira called out. The Voraxians, are they secure? They are with me. We are heading to Shelter 7. Good, go quickly. We have reports of structural damage in Sector 12. Maintenance teams are responding, but there may be secondary breaches. Sarah nodded and kept moving. The young Voraxians followed close behind her. They moved differently now than they had that morning. Their playful energy was gone. They were alert, focused. Their predator instincts had activated, but instead of hunting, they were watching for danger. They were protecting. They were almost at the shelter when the explosion happened. It was not a direct hit. The blast came from somewhere below them, shaking the entire corridor. The floor buckled, the ceiling cracked. Emergency barriers began deploying automatically, sealing off damaged sections. And then Sarah saw the group trapped on the other side of a closing barrier. There were 5 young ones. Different species. A luminary child glowing with fear. Two small Florians huddled together. A young Aquelian in a portable water sphere, and a tiny Veloxian, barely more than an infant, crying in terror. Their caretaker was nowhere to be seen. The barrier was closing. In seconds, they would be sealed off from the safe section. They would be trapped in the damaged zone. Sarah did not hesitate. She ran toward the closing barrier. "Stay here," she shouted to the Voraxians. "Get to the shelter." She reached the trapped children just as the barrier was about to seal. She managed to grab the Veloxian infant and push two of the Florians through the gap. But the barrier was closing too fast. The luminary child and the Aquelian were still on the wrong side. Sarah made a choice. She shoved the children she was holding through the gap and dove back for the others. The barrier slammed shut behind her. She was now trapped in the damaged section with two terrified alien children, cut off from safety, with who knew what structural failures threatening to kill them all. The luminary child was flickering with distress. Its light form was becoming unstable. Sarah had learned about this condition. Luminary children could fade completely when their fear became too intense. They could literally cease to exist. "Look at me," Sarah said firmly. She knelt in front of the glowing child. "Look at my eyes. Focus on my voice. You are going to be okay. I am going to keep you safe." The child's flickering slowed. Its light steadied slightly. It was listening. Sarah picked up the Aquelian's water sphere. The small creature inside was pressing its face against the transparent surface, eyes wide with fear. But it was safe for now. The sphere was designed to withstand impacts. As long as it remained intact, the Aquelian would survive. "We need to move," Sarah said. "There may be another way to the shelter. Stay close to me." She began navigating through the damaged section. The corridor was filled with debris. Ceiling panels had fallen. Pipes had burst, spraying steam and strange-colored liquids. The air smelled like burning metal and chemicals. Sarah picked her way through carefully, holding the Aquelian sphere in one arm and keeping the luminary child close with the other. Every few steps, she had to check for stable ground. Some sections of the floor had buckled so badly that they could collapse at any moment. She found a maintenance hatch that led to a lower level. It was not an official evacuation route. But Sarah remembered the station schematics she had studied when she first arrived. If she could get down 2 levels and across one section, she could reach another emergency shelter. The climb down was difficult. The luminary child could float, which helped. But the ladder was damaged and unstable. Sarah had to go slowly, testing each rung before putting her weight on it. The Aquelian sphere was heavy and awkward. Her arms were aching by the time she reached the bottom. They emerged into a corridor that was less damaged but completely dark. The main power had failed in this section. Emergency lights flickered weakly every few meters, providing just enough illumination to see obstacles. Sarah kept moving. She talked constantly, keeping the luminary child focused on her voice rather than on the fear. She told stories about Earth. She described the ocean, how it stretched from horizon to horizon, filled with creatures both gentle and dangerous. She described the forests, with their ancient trees and hidden paths. She described the mountains, where snow capped the peaks, even in summer. The luminary child's light grew steadier as she talked. It was working. The child was calming down. Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief. Then she heard the sound. It was a groaning, creaking, tearing sound. Metal under stress, metal about to fail. Sarah looked up and saw the ceiling bowing inward. Something heavy was pressing down from above, something that was about to break through. She ran. There was no time for careful steps. No time for testing the ground. She ran with everything she had, clutching the Aquelian sphere, the luminary child flying beside her, desperately trying to reach the shelter door she could see ahead. The ceiling collapsed behind her. A massive piece of machinery crashed through, smashing into the floor where she had been standing moments before. The impact knocked her off her feet. She rolled, protecting the Aquelian sphere with her body, feeling debris rain down around her. For a moment, everything was dark and still. Then Sarah opened her eyes. She was alive. She hurt everywhere, but she was alive. The Aquilian sphere was intact. The Luminary child was hovering nearby, its light pulsing with residual fear, but stable. And standing in front of her, claws raised defensively, scales gleaming in the emergency lighting, were 3 young Voraxians. "You told us to stay back," Krath said. His voice held something that might have been accusation. "You told us to go to the shelter." "Krath, you did not listen," Sarah managed. Her voice was weak. She was pretty sure something was broken. "Voraxians do not abandon pack members," Vera said. She was already moving debris away from Sarah, her powerful claws making short work of the wreckage. "We are not pack members," Sarah pointed out, wincing as Tor helped her to a sitting position. "You are now," Tor said simply. "You protected us. You cared for us. You showed us that strength is not only about claws and teeth. That makes you pack. And pack protects pack." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. She blamed it on the pain. That was easier than admitting she was moved by the words of a child predator. Together, the unlikely group made their way to the shelter. Krath led, his senses alert for any danger. Vera helped support Sarah, who could walk, but not quickly. Tor carried the Aquilian sphere with surprising gentleness. The Luminary child floated along with them, its light now steady and bright, drawn to the warmth of the group. They reached the shelter door. It opened at Sarah's authorization code. Inside, Director Mira and dozens of other beings were waiting. When they saw Sarah and the children emerge from the damaged section, there was a collective gasp. Mira rushed forward. "Sarah, we thought you were lost. The barrier sealed before we could." "I am fine," Sarah said, though she was clearly not fine. "The children need attention. The Luminary is stable, but was flickering badly. The Aquilian should be checked for stress." Medical personnel swarmed forward, taking charge of the rescued children. Someone tried to guide Sarah to a medical station, but she refused to move until she was certain all the young ones were being cared for. The young Voraxians stood around her like a protective wall. Anyone who tried to approach Sarah had to go through them first. Their 4 eyes watched every movement, assessed every potential threat. They had adopted this human. They would defend her. Hours later, when the crisis was over and the station was being repaired, Sarah sat in the medical bay getting her injuries treated. She had 3 cracked ribs, multiple contusions, and a mild concussion. The medical technicians were amazed she had managed to move at all, let alone rescue 2 children while injured. Director Mira came to visit. The Veloxian stood by Sarah's bed, her 4 arms folded in what Sarah had learned was a gesture of deep respect. "The Voraxian delegation has extended the trade negotiations by 1 week, Mira said. High Commander Vrakthos himself requested the extension. Sarah was confused. "Because of the emergency? Because of you?" Mira's voice held wonder. "His children told him what happened. They told him about your bravery. They told him about your kindness. They told him about the things you taught them. Vrakthos has asked to meet you personally." "Meet me? The High Commander wants to meet a human babysitter?" "The High Commander wants to meet the warrior who protected his offspring," Mira corrected. "In Voraxian culture, what you did today transcends species. You placed yourself between danger and children. You nearly died protecting the young. This is the highest honor a Voraxian can recognize." The next day, still bruised and bandaged, Sarah was escorted to the diplomatic wing of the station. She was brought into a grand chamber where the Voraxian delegation waited. High Commander Vrakthos sat on a raised platform. He was massive, even by Voraxian standards. His scales were dark as obsidian. His 4 eyes burned with an intensity that made Sarah want to look away. But she did not look away. She had faced 3 young Voraxians that morning. She had survived a station breach. She could face this. "Approach," Vrakthos commanded. His voice echoed through the chamber. Sarah walked forward until she stood before the platform. She was aware of how small she must look. How fragile. How soft. "My offspring speak highly of you," Vrakthos said. They say you showed no fear. They say you protected them as a mother protects her young. They say you taught them that strength takes many forms. Your children are remarkable, Sarah replied. They are intelligent and curious and brave. It was my honor to care for them. You risked your life to save children who were not your own. Children of species that were not your own. Children you had never met. Why? Sarah thought about the question. It was the same question Krath had asked her. The same question she had been asking herself. Because every child deserves protection, she said finally. Because the universe is vast and strange and sometimes frightening. And young ones should not have to face it alone. Because somewhere, on my homeworld, generations ago, someone protected my ancestors when they could have looked away, and their choice, made in a moment of danger, echoed through time until I stood here today. I hope my choice echoes too. The chamber was silent. Vrakthos stared at her for a long moment. His 4 eyes seemed to pierce through her, seeing something beyond her soft flesh and fragile bones. Then, slowly, the High Commander rose from his platform. He descended the steps until he stood before Sarah. Up close. He was terrifying. His claws could cut through steel. His jaws could crush stone. He could kill her with a single casual swipe. Instead, he lowered his head. In Voraxian culture, this was the greatest possible gesture of respect. It was acknowledgement of an equal. It was honor given from one warrior to another. Among the Voraxians, you would be named Shield-Bearer, Vrakthos said, one who stands between danger and those who cannot protect themselves. It is a title we have never given to an outsider. It is a title we have never given to a human. He paused. His 4 eyes met Sarah's too. Until now, Sarah Chen of Earth, Shield-Bearer of Vorax. The Federation has many warriors with claws and teeth and armor, but the greatest warriors are those who protect not because they must, but because they choose to. You have chosen, and the Voraxian Empire will not forget. When Sarah left the chamber that day, she walked differently, not because of her injuries, not because of the exhaustion, but because she understood something she had not understood before. Strength was not about size or power or weapons. Strength was about standing up when it mattered. It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves. It was about showing kindness even when the universe seemed cold and indifferent. She was a babysitter from a small town in Colorado. She was soft and fragile and had no claws or armor or natural weapons. And somehow, she had earned the respect of apex predators. The young Voraxians came to say goodbye before their delegation left the station. Krath, Vera, and Tor stood before her in the docking bay. Their postures formal, but their eyes warm. We will remember you, Krath said. Always. We will tell our offspring about you, Vera added. The human who was not afraid. The human who showed us what true strength means. Will we see you again? Tor asked. There was hope in his voice. Sarah smiled. The universe is vast. Who knows what paths we'll cross? She hugged each of them. It was not a Voraxian custom. But they accepted it. They even seemed to enjoy it, though Krath would have denied it fiercely if asked. As the Voraxian ship departed, Sarah stood at the observation window and watched it disappear into the stars. Director Mira came to stand beside her. You have changed things, Mira said. The negotiations were more successful than anyone expected. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges. The Voraxians have even expressed interest in learning more about human childcare practices. They want to understand how such a soft species raises offspring who become so resilient. Sarah laughed. It hurt her ribs, but she laughed anyway. Maybe we will have Voraxian exchange students one day. Young ones coming to Earth to learn about human culture. Sasher, stranger things have happened, Mira agreed. After all, a human babysitter just earned the respect of apex beasts. Anything is possible now. Then, Sarah nodded. She thought about the children waiting for her back at the care center. She thought about the Luminari child whose light had steadied at the sound of her voice. She thought about the Aquelian she had carried through danger. She thought about 3 young Voraxians who had defied orders to come back for her. She was a caretaker. It was what she did. It was what she was. And across the galaxy, in ways she could never have imagined, she would continue to care, because that was the human way. That was strength, and the universe was finally beginning to understand.